It's July 15th, 1099. You're standing in a street in Jerusalem that's ankle-deep in blood. Not metaphorical blood. Actual human blood mixed with rainwater and waste, creating a slurry that sticks to your boots. The air smells like copper and rot and burning hair. Bodies are stacked in doorways because there's nowhere else to put them. Women scream from inside mosques where Crusader knights have chased them. A child's hand reaches out from under a pile of corpses, still twitching. And walking through this hell, calm as a man surveying a construction site, is a tall, blonde warrior covered in gore that isn't his. His name is Godfrey of Bouillon. In 3 weeks, the most powerful men in Christendom will offer him a crown, the kingdom of Jerusalem, everything his family ever wanted. He will look them in the eye and say no. This isn't a fairy tale about humility. This is the story of the most calculated political refusal in medieval history. Here's what you think you know. Godfrey of Bouillon was a pious, humble crusader who conquered Jerusalem and refused to be king because he was too holy, too modest to wear a crown where Christ wore thorns. That's the legend, pious, self-sacrificing, almost saintly. Here's the reality. Godfrey of Bouillon was a battlefield engineer, a logistical genius, a political operator who understood that in the summer of 1099, taking a crown would destroy him within 6 months. He turned down the title and took the power instead. He invented a new political formula that would outlive kingdoms, and the path that led him there was paved with decisions so brutal they make modern realpolitik look like a children's game. This is the story of how one man conquered the holiest city in 3 religions, waded through blood to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and then made a choice that redefined what leadership could mean. No crown, no throne, just a title no one had ever heard of, and a strategy so sophisticated it took historians 900 years to fully understand it. Let's rewind. The road to hell. Godfrey of Bouillon doesn't start as a crusader, he starts as a problem. Born around 1060, Godfrey is the second son of a powerful Low Countries family. Second sons in medieval Europe are expensive furniture. You can't disinherit them completely because that causes succession wars, but you can't give them everything because that splits your power base. So you give them just enough to be useful and not enough to be satisfied. Godfrey gets the title Duke of Lower Lorraine, which sounds impressive until you realize it comes with castles that leak, borders that shift every decade, and vassals who barely acknowledge his authority. He spends his 20s managing a territory that bleeds money, fending off rival claimants, and slowly realizing he's trapped. He's competent, respected in battle, known for being unusually tall and strong even by knightly standards. Chronicles describe him as capable of beheading a man with one sword stroke or cleaving a mounted warrior from shoulder to saddle. But competence doesn't pay debts. He owes money to the Bishop of Liege. He owes loyalty to the Holy Roman Emperor. He's 35 years old and running out of moves. Then Pope Urban II calls the First Crusade in November 1095. And Godfrey sees the door. This isn't about piety. This is about liquidation. Godfrey sells or mortgages nearly everything he owns, castles, lands, titles. He raises an army of approximately 40,000 people, though only about 10,000 are actual fighting men. The rest are pilgrims, craftsmen, women, children, hangers-on hopping to reach Jerusalem and somehow survive. He borrows more money. He burns his bridges, because if he succeeds, he won't need Lower Lorraine. And if he fails, Lower Lorraine won't matter anyway. This is the calculus of desperation, dressed up as holy war. Godfrey's contingent marches east in August 1096. Within 6 months, reality sets in. The crusade isn't one army. It's 4 separate, competing columns led by rival noblemen who hate each other. Godfrey's group moves through Hungary, then Byzantine territory. The Byzantine emperor, Alexios I Komnenos, looks at these armed foreigners flooding his empire and sees exactly what they are, a locust swarm with swords. He negotiates, bribes, threatens, and eventually extracts oaths of loyalty from the Crusader leaders. Godfrey resists at first, then folds. He swears an oath to return any conquered Byzantine territory to Alexios. He will break that oath within 2 years, not because he's treacherous by nature, but because oaths made under duress don't survive contact with reality. The Crusaders lay siege to Nicaea in May 1097. They take it, but Alexios claims it before they can loot it properly. Resentment builds. Then comes the march across Anatolia in summer heat that kills horses, pilgrims, and morale. Sources describe men collapsing from thirst, drinking their own urine, sucking blood from horses' veins. The Seljuk Turks harass them with mounted archers who strike and vanish before the Crusaders can form ranks. At the Battle of Dorylaeum in July 1097, the Crusaders nearly break. Godfrey's tactical coordination with Bohemond of Taranto saves the army, but barely. This is the grinder, and Godfrey learns fast. He learns that logistics trump valor, that water sources dictate strategy, that morale is a resource as finite as arrows, that noblemen will backstab each other even when survival depends on unity. He also learns something darker: violence works. The siege economy of horror. By the time the Crusaders reach Antioch in October 1097, they're already veterans of a kind of war Europe hasn't seen in generations. Total war. War where civilians are resources, cities are targets, and mercy is a luxury no one can afford. Antioch is one of the great fortified cities of the world. Massive walls, strong garrison, secure supply lines. The Crusaders can't take it by storm, so they settle in for a siege that lasts 8 months. 8 months of starvation. 8 months of watching your army dissolve from disease, desertion, and despair. Chronicles report Crusaders boiling and eating leather straps, chewing grass, devouring the flesh of dead horses left rotting in the sun. And then the whispers start, whispers of cannibalism. Later chroniclers will claim it was only the dead who were eaten, only in the most desperate extremes. Modern historians doubt even that much restraint. When men starve, they stop being men. They become math problems. A dead Muslim defender has meat. You don't. Solve the equation. Godfrey keeps his men in line better than most commanders, but he doesn't stop the horror. He can't. This isn't a war where you can afford moral high ground. Antioch finally falls in June 1098 through betrayal. A garrison commander lets the Crusaders in through a tower. The city is sacked. The slaughter is comprehensive. Then, 3 days later, a massive Muslim relief army arrives and besieges the besiegers. The Crusaders are trapped inside a city they just destroyed, surrounded, starving again. This is where weaker men break. Godfrey doesn't. He organizes foraging parties. He enforces discipline. He shares rations with common soldiers, which sounds noble until you realize it's tactical. You can't command men who think you're hoarding food while they starve. The Crusaders hold. The relief army withdraws, and the path to Jerusalem opens. Tactical breakdown, the road south. By January 1099, the crusade is a shadow of what it was. Maybe 15,000 people left, fewer than 2,000 knights. The rest dead, deserted, or too sick to march. But those who remain are hardened in ways that make them terrifying. They march down the Levantine coast. Raymond of Toulouse leads attacks on fortified cities. Godfrey hangs back, conserving his forces, watching the other leaders bleed themselves dry in sieges that gain little. This isn't cowardice. This is patience. He's learned the game. Let the others expend men and resources on secondary targets. Arrive at Jerusalem with the strongest remaining force. Control the final objective. The Crusaders reach Jerusalem on June 7, 1099. The city is held by the Fatimid Caliphate, who took it from the Seljuks the year before. The garrison is relatively small, maybe 1,000 fighters, but the walls are ancient, thick, expertly maintained. The Crusaders have no siege engines, no timber to build them. The defenders have stripped the surrounding countryside bare. No water except a few polluted wells miles away. The calendar is the real enemy. It's summer. Heat kills as efficiently as swords. Every day you wait outside Jerusalem, you lose men to thirst, disease, desertion. Godfrey does the math. You can't starve out a city when you're starving faster than the defenders. You can't wait for reinforcements that don't exist. You have one move: assault the walls before your army disintegrates. But you need siege towers, which need timber, which doesn't exist. So Godfrey organizes foraging parties that range 15, 20 miles out, Beyond where the defenders strip the land, they find a forest. They tear it apart. They haul massive logs back under the sun while Muslim cavalry harasses them. Men die of heatstroke dragging timber. And then comes the engineering. The towers of desperation. Godfrey oversees the construction of two massive siege towers. Not personally, he's not a carpenter, but he organizes the labor, secures the materials, rations the water for the workers. This is logistics as life or death calculus. The towers take 5 weeks. 5 weeks while men die, 5 weeks while morale cracks, 5 weeks while the defenders watch and prepare. Chronicles describe Godfrey working alongside common soldiers, hauling timber, soaking hides in vinegar to fireproof the tower frames. Later hagiographies will call this humility. It's not. It's leadership. You can't ask men to die building siege engines if you won't risk splinters. By mid-July, the towers are ready. The plan is simple, brutal, and risky. Roll the towers to the walls under cover of darkness. At dawn, push them the final distance. Crusader archers in the towers will suppress the defenders. Knights will cross from the tower platforms onto the walls. If they secure a foothold, infantry floods in behind them. If they don't, everyone dies. This isn't a siege where you have a backup plan. This is all in. July 15th, 1099, the Bloodist morning. The assault begins at dawn. Godfrey's tower is pushed toward the northern wall. Raymond's tower targets the southern section. The defenders rain arrows, stones, and Greek fire, a medieval napalm that burns through wood and flesh. The towers catch fire. Crusaders tear off their own shirts, soak them in what little water they have, and beat out the flames while arrows punch through their backs. Godfrey stands at the top of his tower. Sources disagree on the exact sequence, but most chronicles agree on this. He's one of the first onto the wall. A tall, blonde figure in blood-streaked armor, sword in hand, stepping from a burning tower onto a stone rampart while defenders try to push him off. He doesn't fall, his knights follow, they carve a foothold, then a breach, then a flood. The city breaks. The human cost, what happens next? What happens in Jerusalem over the next 2 days is one of the most debated massacres in medieval history. The Crusader chronicles are surprisingly honest, probably because they thought mass slaughter of non-Christians was divinely justified. Muslim and Jewish sources are unsurprisingly more detailed and more horrified. The Crusaders kill everyone they can find. Men, women, children. The Fatimid garrison retreats to the Tower of David and negotiates surrender. Raymond of Toulouse guarantees their safety and escorts them out. Everyone else is fair game. Jews flee to their main synagogue. The Crusaders bar the doors and burn it down with everyone inside. Muslims crowd into the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Crusaders storm it. Later chroniclers will claim the blood was ankle-deep, even knee-deep. Modern historians debate the exact death toll, maybe 10,000, maybe 30,000, maybe more. The archaeological record suggests the lower end, but the psychological record is clear. This was a slaughter comprehensive enough to traumatize even the men who committed it. Godfrey walks through this. He doesn't stop it. He doesn't order it, but he doesn't prevent it either. Because this is what happens when you tell 2,000 starving, traumatized soldiers that the city they just bled to conquer is theirs to loot. You don't control that. You ride it out and hope it burns itself out before it consumes everything. By July 17th, the killing slows, not from mercy, from exhaustion. The Crusaders stagger to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the holiest site in Christendom, the tomb of Christ. They weep, they pray, they collapse, and their leaders begin the most dangerous negotiation of the entire crusade. Who rules Jerusalem now? The refusal. Here's the situation. You've conquered the holiest city in Christendom. You've lost most of your army doing it. You're surrounded by hostile Muslim powers who will counterattack the moment they organize. Your supply lines run back through territory held by the Byzantine emperor, who you betrayed, and rival Crusader lords who want Jerusalem for themselves. Whoever becomes king of Jerusalem inherits a target. The other leaders gather. They offer the crown to Raymond of Toulouse first. He's the richest, the most politically connected. He refuses. Sources disagree on why. Maybe he sees the trap. Maybe he wants someone else to take the risk first so he can undermine them later. So they turn to Godfrey. And Godfrey says no. And this is the move that changes everything. He doesn't just refuse. He counters. He accepts a different title, Advocatus Sancti Sepulchri. Advocate of the Holy Sepulchre, defender of the Holy Sepulchre, protector. Not king, not even prince, advocate. The calculation. This looks like humility, it's not. Here's what Godfrey understands that the others don't. Taking the title King of Jerusalem makes you a rival to every Christian king in Europe. It makes you a target for the Pope, who doesn't want secular monarchs controlling holy sites. It makes you a blasphemer in the eyes of religious extremists who think no man should wear a crown where Christ wore thorns. But advocate of the Holy Sepulchre, that's new, that's undefined. It carries authority without the baggage. It says, I'm not here to rule, I'm here to protect. I'm a steward, not a king. It's also brilliant politics. By refusing the crown, Godfrey makes himself indispensable. The other Crusader lords can't accuse him of ambition because he turned down the highest prize. The church can't condemn him because his title is explicitly religious, not dynastic. And the common soldiers, who just watched 10,000 people die, see a leader who chose duty over glory. He doesn't take the throne. He takes the power without the target on his back. And it works. Within weeks, Godfrey is functioning as the de facto ruler of Jerusalem. He organizes the defense. He negotiates with the Patriarch of Jerusalem, the religious authority, and secures the church's support. He rations food. He assigns quarters. He starts rebuilding the walls. And when a massive Fatimid army marches north from Egypt to retake Jerusalem, Godfrey leads the Crusader forces south to meet them at the Battle of Ascalon in August 1099. The Crusaders are outnumbered, but they're also veterans of 3 years of hell. They win. The Fatimid army shatters. The immediate threat evaporates. Godfrey returns to Jerusalem as the man who saved it, still not king, still just the advocate. He rules for exactly 1 year. In July 1100, he falls ill, probably typhoid, possibly poisoning. Sources disagree. He dies on July 18, 1100, 1 year and 3 days after taking Jerusalem. His brother Baldwin, who stayed behind in the county of Edessa, rushes to Jerusalem and immediately takes the title King of Jerusalem. No hesitation, no humility. The crown Godfrey refused, Baldwin grabs with both hands. And the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Crusader state that will last for 2 centuries, is born from Godfrey's refusal and Baldwin's ambition. The aftermath in numbers. The First Crusade started with perhaps 60,000 people. Maybe 15,000 reached Jerusalem. By the time Godfrey died, fewer than 3,000 Frankish fighting men held the entire region. They were surrounded by millions of Muslims, Byzantines, and local Christians who viewed them as invaders. They had no reinforcements, no supply lines, no clear plan beyond survival. Godfrey's political innovation, the advocate title, the separation of secular and religious authority, gave the early Crusader states just enough flexibility to survive. His successors abandoned the title, but the precedent held. Jerusalem was different. It wasn't just another kingdom. It was a holy project that transcended normal politics. That's the legacy, not the battles, not the bloodshed, the formula. The legend machine. Within a generation, Godfrey of Bouillon becomes a mythical figure. Chronicles embellish his height, his strength, his piety. He's retconned into the perfect Christian knight, humble, brave, loyal. The refusal of the crown is held up as the ultimate act of holy virtue. The reality is more interesting. Godfrey was a tactical genius who understood that power doesn't require titles. He was a logistics expert who kept an army alive through conditions that killed most medieval expeditions. He was a political operator who turned a refusal into a masterstroke. He was also a man who walked through streets filled with corpses and didn't flinch, who oversaw or allowed atrocities that still echo in Middle Eastern memory 9 centuries later, who built his legacy on a foundation of suffering so immense it's hard to comprehend. This isn't a story where you get to pick the hero. This is a story where you watch a man make impossible choices in impossible circumstances and then decide for yourself whether the outcomes justified the costs. The real question. Here's what historians still argue about. Did Godfrey refuse the crown because he was genuinely pious or because he was a political genius? The answer is probably both. Medieval people didn't separate religion and politics the way we do. Faith and strategy were the same language. But here's the darker question. What does it say about us that we turned a man who waded through blood into a symbol of humility? That we built a legend around a refusal while forgetting the 10,000 people who died so that refusal could be made? Godfrey of Bouillon conquered Jerusalem. He refused the crown. He ruled without ruling. He died a year later, and his brother turned his political innovation into a kingdom. And the Crusader states, fragile, brutal, doomed, lasted for 200 years, long enough to reshape the world. They redrew the map of the Middle East. They triggered centuries of conflict. They introduced European military architecture, legal systems, and trade networks that still influence the region today. All because one man looked at a crown and said, "I don't need that. I'll take something better." How true. So here's the question for you. Was Godfrey of Bouillon a saint or a strategist, a humble pilgrim or a calculating operator who understood that the best way to hold power is to never officially claim it? Drop your take in the comments. Historians have been arguing about this for 900 years. Let's keep it going. And if you want to understand what happened next, what the Kingdom of Jerusalem actually looked like once Baldwin took the crown, and how the Crusader states survived in a sea of enemies, that's the next story. Because Godfrey refused the crown, but his successors built a kingdom on that refusal, and the costs just kept mounting.